Bless us.
Shalom.
Shalom. All praises.
This is Waco Israel Ministries.
Yes,
we
sir.
give all praise and honor to the Most High Ahayah, through His Son Yashayah, and to Ruach Kudash, the Holy Spirit, for this opportunity beyond in front of you.
Yes, sir. Judge.
We will be
What an honor.
going into.
An honor. Yeah, let's just do the book. Let's just do the book tonight. Because I don't want to be too long. I'm beat, Judge. I didn't sleep with this one.
We'll share the reading in the book, I guess. Since
Cody, open that light, please.
we will be going back
Thank you,
into
Pagan Christianity.
pagan Christianity. We're in chapter 8, tithing and clergy salaries. We're learning the history and origin of how the tithing system started and the origin of tithing. We're going into tonight. We're going into the origin of tithes and clergy salaries.
I thought we did that already. Oh, the second part, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a short chapter, so we'll just finish the chapter out. That's all. Okay. Only like 3 pages
28 pages. That's good.
to read.
All right.
So before we go into that,
Let's talk
a minute, and I have a couple precepts I want to read.
We always bring the word. We always, even though we don't want to sometimes, because we are a living word. We are a living, epistle. We are. Paul says we're living epistles. All right. And it's got to be, preaching's got to be spontaneous. And Christ said, when you go, preach. He didn't say when you go, make up a sermon.
Or set up a building.
Set up a building. He said, when you go, wherever you go, preach. Saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick. That's for the tribe. That's not for these certain churches that are in the world today that have nothing to do with the law and the Sabbath. It's not for them.
So
those healings are false healings.
And be ready, because the next chapter we're going to be breaking down is going into baptism and the Lord's Supper, diluting the sacraments. That's chapter 9. Hold on. So as we have discovered so far from last evening and the last evening and the lesson that we kicked off with that information about the origin of the tithe and what it was in the Bible and how much it was supposed to be. Actually, tithing was never 10%. Tithing was supposed to be 23.5%.
Once a year, annual.
Once a year or once every 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because every 3 years was 6. Then on the 7th year, the land would rest for a Shabbat year where no one would plant. The whole nation or the whole land of Israel would rest. No one would work. No one would. That's why they stored up all that food for 7 years.
The latter rain, the farmer.
For 6 years.
The farmer, when he waits for the latter rain.
Uh-huh.
See, that's what they did. After the latter rain came, then the crops would get big and great, and then they'd put them in the storehouse. Granary, Jock, you called it? Granary.
Granaries. Because that's what a storehouse is. It's a granary. It's where you store vegetables and food and grain.
Right. Absolutely.
We also learned that the tithe was only for the Levites,
mm-hmm.
who did not have land. So when Moses, when in Deuteronomy, when they went into the land, when they split the land between the tribes, the Levite tribe wasn't given land, a place to dwell, because they were supposed to be the traveling ministers
Like
of
the
the Most
tabernacle.
High.
That's right.
They were supposed to be a traveling witness.
Right, there you go.
In other words, biblically,
go.
a pastor isn't supposed to depend on the congregation to live.
In a building.
Honestly, a pastor really shouldn't set up in one location.
That's right.
He should travel everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
which also means, and if you look at all the Abraham, David, they were all shepherds.
They all travel.
They were all, look at the apostles, they were all fishermen. Paul was a tent maker. In other words, all of them worked outside of the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
The ministry,
They didn't take any money from anyone.
biblically, ministry is supposed to be a part-time, unpaid job.
Say it again, unpaid. Say it again.
Ministry is supposed to be a part-time, unpaid job.
Oh no, we support our pastor. We give him a home. That's unbiblical.
You're allowing a man to rob you of your money.
He is not God. You don't lift him up as a God. He's only a man. I'm the pastor. And they're ignorant, they're indignant, they're arrogant. Most of the ones I met.
So
very arrogant people.
So also tithing was only supposed to be the fruits of the ground or the herd of your sheep.
Mm-hmm.
It was never,
absolutely,
it was never money based.
That's right.
Now, if you read the Old Testament,
money,
if you couldn't bring if you brought too much, if you harvested,
was too burden.
If you harvested too much, right, and you brought it to the Levites, they would give you the option of changing your grain and your food into money,
right? Because
and then you would pay give the money to the Levites, and they would give you back food, and they would take the money you give them and give to the widows, the fatherless.
Wait, this is good. They didn't pocket it.
Right. That's what I was saying.
Preacher, I'll tell you right now, they didn't pocket it.
Right. Let me say that again.
Right.
So, optionally,
you say different.
If you wanted to, if you were a Gentile and you were following the laws, let's say like this, you brought your food or your tithe to either food or animals to the temple in Jerusalem.
Right, that's right.
Every feast day or every Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
The Levites who were in the temple, who did not have land,
right, there you go,
would then collect the food or whatever you gave them, and if it was too much for you to bring, they would compensate you for the food with money. They would give you food back. Then they would take the money that you did not, and take care of the poor, the strangers, the fatherless, the widows, and whatever they needed to run the temple.
Well, Josh, Jeremiah, didn't he say, don't go through the day on Sabbath with a burden? That's what they're talking about too. Mm-hmm. It was too burdensome for you to carry this tithing to them. Then they would exchange it. No.
So we understand that the biblical understanding of tithing was never money based. It was always agricultural.
That's right.
It was always based on the land.
Absolutely.
Why? Because Israel as all the other countries around it and lands were agricultural cultures.
Mhm.
They lived and they depended on the
Their own
rain
food.
and the land
That's right.
to produce the food for their animals.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
Gotten out of whack a little, hasn't it, Josh?
and biblically, the people collecting the tithes never pocketed the money. They always put the money into the temple, the building they were in, to maintain it, or they gave it away to the poor, the widows, the fatherless, and the strangers, people who were did not have anything.
What's this? So if the Levites didn't do that, if they went out and bought new chariots and new stuff to show up, they would be hypocrites in front of the people. That's why they took it and bring it to people who needed it right away. The New Testament says it, doesn't it? That they laid the money at the apostles' feet.
They laid their possessions at the
apostles' feet, not for them to get rich,
and
because they were never rich.
And then the apostles distributed
Mhm.
the wealth to everybody,
So everybody would have everything common.
including the poor, the
Right,
fatherless,
that's
and the
right.
strangers
Same thing.
amongst the congregations.
Mhm.
So everybody had all in common.
Nobody.
So what were they? They were continuing the same Levitical practice of distributing the wealth to the people.
And what else out? They were keeping, what's this, coveted out, jealousy, envy. They were
So
keeping all that out.
when everyone has the same as everyone else, what's there to covet?
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. So you're telling me the church is running right? No, it ain't. It's running just the opposite of the Bible. And I'm sorry, I'm saying it. Everything they teach is opposite of the Bible. Almost everything, every doctrine, almost every doctrine.
So before we go
But that's
into
okay.
the book,
We're praying for you
again,
that you come into
we're
church.
going to talk about the origin of clergy salaries today.
Oh, you want to hear some scriptures, what you said?
Just some review scriptures.
Oh, we're starting here, right? The origin of the tithe and the clergy salary.
Yeah. Open our Bibles, Dad.
Yeah.
Let's open up the Bible. Genesis 2, 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Boy, you never hear this in church. You'll never hear this in church.
It's nullified.
It's nullified. The Old Testament is done away with. Wow, watch out. Watch what you say. You're held accountable.
They really don't realize what they're doing.
No, they sure don't.
That's why we're here to help you.
So we're here really to forgive you, because we came out of that era. And that's why we're on YouTube almost 9 years.
And we're not here to judge you.
No, we're here to help you see the truth.
Conviction is what you need in your life.
And that's our prayers here in this ministry, that the Most High convict you.
But you have to bring the truth to truly convict somebody.
Right. How can you be convicted? There's no truth.
I said Genesis 2?
Yes, Genesis 2.
Okay. 1 and 2. Read.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them, the moon, the stars, and everything. And on the seventh day.
And on the what day?
Sunday.
First day. On the what day?
Seventh day.
On the what day?
Seventh day.
On the seventh day, read.
The Most High ended his work.
So if God ended his work on the Shabbat, when should we? On the Shabbat.
That's right.
Now this is before any Moses, any Abraham. This is God himself.
Now a lot of you
if we are to imitate the Most High and his Son,
yes,
are we not to imitate the day they worship?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
Are not we supposed to line up with the heavenlies?
This is not a compromising quote, but the government knows this, and they hate the tribes. So what they did was they made everybody lie. They lied to the whole world in Constantine's time and changed the Sabbath to Sunday. So they would make you work on the holy day, and they did it. They did it. So you can find time for the Sabbath on Friday if you can't make it on Saturday, because it starts Friday night.
Not Friday. Well, there.
You know what I mean.
Saturday.
Yeah, but it starts when it gets dark Friday night till Saturday night till it gets dark. So you still have a chance, right, to have a quiet time you know, with the Most High. If you're forced to work, I hope you're not.
Read.
Okay. And on the seventh day, the Most High ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day
Read.
from all his work which he had made.
Read.
And the Most High blessed the Sabbath day, the seventh day.
And he what? The Sabbath?
He blessed the first day.
He blessed Sunday. He blessed the what day?
He blessed the Sabbath day, Saturday, and sanctified it.
Well, no, he blessed the seventh day. Remember, no names. The seventh day.
Wow, right. Because that in it he had rested from all his work which the Most High created and made. So Josh is right what he just said. Shouldn't we give honor to the Most High? Shouldn't we find, right, Tony, a quiet time on Saturday to rest, you know, to get alone?
Exodus 20, 8 through 10. Exodus 20, 8 through 10.
Okay,
Hold on.
take your time.
And let's see if Christ changed this in the New Testament. We're going to
Mhm.
go there.
Mhm.
I want to throw this topic out there. What day does the Bible command us to go to church on? Or assembly on?
You mean today, the modern day church?
You know what? No.
Oh, you mean Christianity? Or us?
No, in general.
Sunday.
No, in general. No, what day does the Bible command everyone to worship
Oh,
on?
Saturday.
That's what I mean.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
what I want to show you before we go
absolutely.
into.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. Absolutely. You see, this truth is coming out of our spirit. They force the world to worship on Sunday. These Edomites, they know the Bible. These bankers. And they're behind it. They don't want you worshiping on the Sabbath.
Verse 8, read.
Okay, ready? Verse 8. Hold on.
Read.
Leave me in there. Oh. Remember the Sabbath day.
Forget the Sabbath.
Remember the Sabbath day.
Christ did away with the Sabbath.
Remember the Sabbath day.
Sunday.
Sabbath day. To keep it holy.
Read.
6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Most High thy power. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, and thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gate, like you visit your home.
Read.
For in 6 days,
in 6 days,
the Most High made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is.
Read.
And rested the seventh day.
First day.
Seventh day.
First day.
Seventh day.
Read.
Wherefore the Most High blessed the Sabbath day.
No, he blessed Sunday.
Blessed the Sabbath day.
The first day.
Hallowed it.
He hallowed the Shabbat.
Hallowed be thy name.
So be it. Let's see if Christ changed this. Go to Luke 4.
Let's see. Let's see what the word says.
See, the word is quick and sharp. I don't need a 3 hour, a 20-minute story.
Yeah.
When I can just read the Bible.
Right. Where we going, Luke? Where, Josh?
Luke 4, 15 and 16.
Okay. 4, 15 and 16. Okay. Four, 15 and 16. Okay. Ready?
Hold on.
Okay. Luke chapter 4, starting at verse 15.
Excuse me, brothers and sisters. The Bible on the screen is faster than I am turning.
It's okay.
So, gotta let the preacher catch up. 4:15. Read.
Okay. And he taught in their synagogues,
Read.
being glorified of all.
their synagogues or their assemblies.
That's
Read.
right. And he came to Nazareth,
And he came to Nazareth,
where he had been brought up,
where he had been brought up. Read.
and as his custom was,
As his what was?
his custom was,
Or his ordinance or his practice was.
from all his forefathers, he went into the synagogue,
Or you can use the word
assembly, on the Sabbath day.
on the first day.
On the Sabbath day.
Sunday.
Sabbath day.
Sunday.
Sabbath day.
Read.
And stood up for to read.
So Christ, wait a minute.
No.
Wait a minute.
Typo.
Christ kept the Sabbath?
Wow.
Let's see what your God Paul kept.
Yeah.
Because you lift him up as if
As a God, is right.
let's go to Acts. And we'll after we read this, we'll go into the book,
Right.
into pagan Christianity.
Acts where, Josh?
Acts 13 through 15.
Okay. 13 through 15. Okay.
Because all Christian pastors will use Paul to justify Christianity.
Yeah.
But let's see whether or not that he taught Christianity. What was Paul's practice? Was it opposite of Christ? Because didn't we just read that Christ went to church on the Sabbath day?
Mm-hmm. We read it in the Old and New.
Didn't we? No. Christ went to church on the Sabbath.
That's right.
So who told you not to?
Uh-huh.
Is the question. Okay, Acts 13:13. Read.
Oh, 13. Sorry, 13. All right. Now, when Paul and his company loosed from
Hold on, Dad.
Patmos,
Acts. I'm in. Okay. Hold
13,
on.
13, right?
13.
13 to 15.
You started that. You should have started at 15.
Acts 13:13. Read.
Now, when Paul and his company loosed from Patmos, they came to Perga in Pamphylia,
In Pamphylia.
sorry, and John, departing from them,
John is Mark.
right, John
Read.
Paul, right, returned to Jerusalem, but they departed from Perga, they came to Antioch in Pisidia, and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day.
On Sunday.
On the Sabbath day.
On the what day?
Sabbath day.
When did Paul go to church?
On the Sabbath day.
Read.
And sat down.
And what?
And sat down.
No, screamed.
Sweat and suit.
And did what?
And after the reading of the law.
The reading of what? Wait.
Uh-oh.
What were they reading?
And after the reading of Christianity.
What were they reading? After the reading of the what?
And after the reading of the law.
The what?
The law.
And the what?
The law and the prophets.
And the wait a minute. Wait.
Okay.
I thought they were Christians. Why are they reading the law?
Uh-oh.
Because at that time there was no New Testament.
Oh.
During the writing of the New Testament, all the teaching and the edification that the apostles were bringing to the natural Israelites and the Gentiles, whether they were Gentile-minded Israelites or natural Gentiles, was coming out of the law, the prophets, and the Psalms. Start verse 15 again.
And after the reading of the law and the prophets, the rulers of the synagogue,
which are the elders,
sent unto them, saying, Ye men and brethren, if ye have any word of exhortation.
So any word of law to exhort. So the law, what does the law do us? The law encourages us, according to Paul.
Look at that. Come on.
According to the New Testament, the laws of God exhort or encourage us.
That's right. For the people, say on.
Stop. So what does exhortation mean? Exhortation is encouragement. So the laws of God encourage you according to the Bible.
That's right. And he keeps
they're not death, as your pastor would make you believe.
Mm-hmm.
They're life and strength to your inner man.
Christianity is death.
Okay, you ready to go into pagan Christianity?
Yes.
Was that a good start?
Yeah.
Actually, we might go back into read a scripture after we read that.
Okay.
We're going to close
The
in
origin
Hebrews.
of the tithe and the clergy salary.
Read.
The New Testament.
Hold on, Dad. Brothers and sisters, I just want to read this one precept, one more precept.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, brother.
We hope no one's hurt too deeply yet.
The
You just
cleaver.
went to your pastor earlier. You might have to run back to him.
Oh, the cleaver. Oh.
Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12. For the word or the laws of God in Christ, the laws of God are quick and powerful and deep and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even unto the dividing of the soul and the spirit,
Come on.
asunder of spirit, soul, and spirit, and the joints and the marrow. And it is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the mind.
Wow.
So when you start dealing with the laws of the Most High according to the Bible, they show you what you are.
Mhm.
Christianity hides what you are and makes you think you're right.
Absolutely.
The laws of God do the exact opposite.
Absolutely.
They show you who you are, and then they show you how to change.
Wow. Okay. We ready?
Yes, read.
The New Testament urges believers to give according to their ability. Christians in the early church gave to help other believers as well as to support apostolic workers, enabling them to travel and plant churches.
So exactly, travel and plant, not to stay and profit.
Yeah, and get 5,000 in one church. No, they didn't do that. One of the most outstanding testimonies of the early church has to do with how generous the Christians were to the poor and needy. This is what provoked outsiders, including the philosopher Galen,
Read.
to watch the awesome, winsome power of the early church and say, "Behold, how they love one another." Wow! In the 3rd century, Cyprian of Carthage was the first Christian writer to mention the practice of financially supporting the clergy.
So 300 years after Christ and Paul, Cyprian invented the idea of paying preachers.
Wow.
A Gentile, a white Gentile Roman Catholic.
He argued that just as...
Wait a minute. So literally every lie has come out of Rome.
That's right.
The Roman Catholic, Romanism and Christianism.
And it's in the Christian church. That's
right. Or Christendom and Catholicism.
Wow.
Read.
He argued that just as the Levites were...
So that's where that lie started, right?
Right.
Oh, we're all Levites. Cyprian started that. A Roman Catholic bishop started that lie.
What a lie. Were supported by the tithe. So the Christian clergy should be supported by the tithe. Mm-hmm. But this is misguided. Josh, you can give me some water, please.
Okay.
Thanks.
You can say something if you want like that.
So today, the Levitical system has been abolished. We are all priests now. So if a priest demands a tithe, then all Christians should tithe to one another.
So if your pastor demands money, you're obligated to give it to him because he's a priest.
Wow. Cyprian's plea was exceedingly rare for his time. It was neither picked up nor echoed by the Christian populace until much later. Other than Cyprian, no Christian writer before Constantine ever used Old Testament references to advocate tithing. It was not until the 4th century.
Hold on. Not until the what?
4th century.
Not until the what?
4th century.
So No person, brothers and sisters, not Christ, not Paul, John, Peter, or any apostle ever used Old Testament references to get you to give money to them.
Wow.
So that is a Roman Catholic invention. Just like every lie that you see in Christianity today, it started with Roman Catholicism.
300 years after Christ.
400 years. The 4th century.
Yeah, 300 years after Christ, that some Christian leaders began to advocate tithing as a Christian practice to support the clergy.
Do what?
To support the clergy.
So biblically, what are you supposed to do? You are supposed to work.
That's right.
Every person in the Bible, Adam, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob were all shepherds. What were the apostles before they followed Christ? Fishermen, tax collectors. They worked. What was Paul other than a Pharisee? He was a tent maker
and a designer. So he designed them and made them.
So he worked. They had financial support outside of the congregations they oversaw.
Wow.
In other words, biblically, a pastor is supposed to have a full-time paying job.
That's right.
And minister
and
at
not
the same time.
Any money from the church people at all.
Period.
But it did not become widespread among Christians until the 8th century. According to one scholar, for the first 700 years, tithes are hardly ever mentioned.
Okay, read.
All right. Carrying the history of Christian tithing is a fascinating. Yeah.
Is it fascinating?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Exercise. Tithing spread from the state to the church. Here's the story. In the 7th and 8th centuries, leasing land was a familiar characteristic of the European economy. The use of the tithe or the tenth was commonly used to calculate payments to landlords. As the church increased its ownership, the land across Europe, the 10% rent charge shifted from secular landlords to the church.
So basically, as the Christian system began to take land from people, dispossess them,
wow,
they started to charge more.
Wow. Ecclesiastical leaders became the landlords, and the tithe became the ecclesiastical activity applied to the Old Testament law and came to be identified with the Levitical tithe. Consequently, the Christian tithe as an institution was based on the fashion of Old Testament practice and a common system of land leasing in medieval Europe.
Wow. A huge system.
Right. By the 8th century, the tithe became required by law in many areas of Western Europe. Wow. By the end of the
So basically, this is the history of how we got tithing over here. So basically, Cyprian started a lie that every pastor is pretty much a priest.
wow.
And that started the ball of paying a priest or a pastor to tell you to teach the Bible to you.
Watch out.
And that is basically the origin of how you see paid pastors today.
Absolutely. By the 8th.
And what is the full end extent of this?
Come on, John.
The prosperity
Wow,
movement.
yeah, that's right. Wow.
That is the extent of what Cyprian, the end result of what Cyprian started.
Wow.
Where you have millionaire so-called preachers with a Bible in their hand, making hundreds of millions off of you a year. Kenneth Copeland
What a devil, man.
is the wealthiest preacher in the world. His net worth, watch this, look this up, I'm not lying. And this is how evil this system is. You know what his net worth, how much money this man has made off of people 40 years or 50 years? $750 million off of your back.
Is it billion or million?
Million.
Okay.
He's almost a billionaire off of telling you a lie.
That's right. He lied to you.
Which tells you the truth. Lies pay you.
Wow.
The truth doesn't pay because truth is free.
Amen.
But you can be a billionaire
How true.
off a lie.
Wow. By the 8th century.
And that's not to say every preacher or every pastor is just like Kenneth Copeland.
No.
Because they're not. I'm not clumping every denomination into one. What I'm saying is every pastor can financially benefit off of tithing to the extent of that being the end. Now, does every pastor do that? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know, because I'm not going to speak on the behalf of every individual pastor. But what I do know is the full extent of that is the prosperity movement, like Kenneth Copeland, Creflo Dollar, T.D. Jakes, Joyce Meyer, John Hagee, his son, all are multi-millionaires off a lie. Jesse Duplantis.
They're all preaching lies. That's right. That's right.
All of them have prospered majorly off of you, off of their supporters, and people who believe it's righteous to give them 10% of their money a week, which translated, there's 4 weeks in a year, so that's 40%. So over 52 weeks in a year, how much is that out of one person's 52? That would, so you're giving a man, one family, in the period of 1 year, 10%, 40% times 12 months.
Wow.
What's 12 times 40?
About 520.
So you're giving the church 500% of you're giving over half of your yearly income to a preacher.
Wow. And what do you get out of it? Nothing.
Read.
By the 8th century, the tithe became required by law in many areas of Western Europe. By the end of the 10th century, the tithe as a rent charge for leasing land had all but faded.
Read.
The tithe, however, remained, and it came to be viewed as a moral requirement supported by the Old Testament. The tithe had...
So you became thought as immoral if you didn't tithe.
Well,
isn't that what the pastor tells you?
Yeah, they make you
You're
feel
under
guilty.
a curse.
The tithe had evolved into a legally mandatory religious practice throughout Christian Europe. To put it another way, before the 8th century, the tithe was practiced as a voluntary offering. By the end of the 10th century, it had developed into a legal requirement to fund the state church. Wow.
To fund the what?
State church. Look at that.
So you are literally funding the government who keeps your church open.
Wow.
By tithing. Read.
Demanded by the clergy and enforced by the secular authorities. You hear that? Wow. Today, the tithe is no longer a legal requirement in any nation. Yet, the obligatory practice of tithing is as much alive today as it was when it was legally tithing. Sure, you may not be physically punished if you fail to tithe, but in many ministries, you'll either be told or be made to feel that you are sinning. Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So they use the.
And I've had a brother tell me this too, but I got mad at him, because I knew that as a Christian, this tithing was a lie. Oh, I left their church. In fact, in some churches, if you are not a tither, you will be barred from holding a ministry position. A friend of mine was considered for eldership in one of the well-known congregations. However, because he believed in giving anonymously, the didn't use checks, he was barred from being an elder. The reason? He was told that the church had to know who was obeying the Most High by tithing and who wasn't. Wow.
So in other words, so the author of the book gave an example. One of his friends was trying to be an elder in a church, but because he didn't give the pastor 10% of his money, they told him he couldn't because he wasn't listening to God.
Wow.
Listen to the wickedness of that, though.
Listen.
How wicked and evil that is.
It is.
So you're not listening to God, or you have no relationship because you don't give the pastor your money.
That's heresy. That's heresy, brothers and sisters, man.
That's evil.
It is.
That's evil.
This was the across-the-board policy of the particular denomination. Only tithers could be elders. Wow.
So in other words, only people who paid the pastor could be elders.
Look at that. Wow. As far as clergy salaries go, ministries were unsalaried for the first 3 centuries. But when Constantine appeared, he instituted the practice of paying a fixed salary to the clergy from church funds and municipal and imperial treasuries. Thus was born the clergy salary, a harmful practice that has no root in the New Testament. No root.
In the New Testament.
So somebody's lying.
Read.
There is no doubt that it is imperative for believers to support the Most High's work financially and to give generously to the poor. Scripture enjoins both, and the kingdom of Ahayah desperately needs both. The issue under scrutiny in this chapter is the proper parties of the tithe as a Christian law, and how it is normally used to fund clergy salaries, operational costs, and church building overhead. Wow. That's staggering. That's it. So the next one will be the burden on the poor. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Save that for next time because we're going to read too much stuff. And this is going to be good. You got to keep listening.
Keep reading.
No, I'm getting headache. It's too much.
If a believer wishes to tithe out of personal decision or conviction, that is fine. Tithing becomes a problem when it is requested, represented as God's command, binding upon every believer.
That's true. That is true.
Under the Old Testament system, tithing was was good news to the poor. However,
That's right.
in our day,
That's right.
monetary tithing equals oppression to the poor.
Wow. Say it
Not-
again.
However, in our modern day, tithing equals oppression to the poor. Not a few poor Christians have been thrown into deeper poverty because they have felt obligated to give beyond their means. Wow. Hold on.
Hear that, Joshua?
Let me
Wow.
hold on, brother.
Wow. You see how they're robbing the church, son? See how they're robbing the people? Huh?
Yep.
That's literally Tony stealing from them.
Not a few poor Christians have been thrown into deeper poverty
Mm-hmm.
because they felt obligated to give beyond their means. In other words, you're giving your rent and your light bill to your pastor, and then you get your lights turned off.
Remember Ringo for Life? Remember he told us that he went to Dallas? He traveled from Pennsylvania to his church, and he gave him $10,000 a year until he realized they were stealing from him.
They have been told that if they don't tithe, they are robbing God and breaking his command. In such cases, the gospel is no longer good news to the poor. Rather, it becomes a heavy burden instead of liberty. It becomes oppression. We are too apt to forget that the original tithe that God established for Israel was to benefit the poor, not harm them.
That's right, to benefit, not to make them feel depressed.
Consequently, contemporary tithing is good news to the rich,
Mm-hmm.
to the high earning 10%. It is but a parley sum. Tithing therefore appeases the consciences of the prosperous without impacting their lifestyles. Not a few wealthy Christians are deluded into thinking they are obeying God because they throw 10% of their income into an offering plate.
Maybe some more.
Hold on. But hold on. But God has a very different view of giving. Recall the parable of the widow's mite. Jesus saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. And he also saw a poor widow putting in 2 small copper coins. I tell you the truth, he said, this poor widow hath put in more than all the others. All those people have given gifts out of their wealth.
That's right.
But she has put in her put out of her poverty, put
The last that she had.
Put in all that she had to live on.
Wow. See, that's
sadly, tithing is often viewed as a limit, as it limits testing of the discipleship. If you are a good Christian, then you will. But this is this Boggs application, tithing is no sign of Christian devotion. It is where the first century Christians in the churches that Paul raised would be condemned as being undevoted because all available evidence shows that they did not tithe. So they would call people that follow Paul undevoted today because they didn't give.
Absolutely, absolutely. And and they claim to know Paul. I mean, they're lifting this brother up like he's a god, and there's their biggest dilemma. Because that brother kept the law, he kept the Sabbath. They kept everything that Christ kept, and they paid dearly for it.
One of the lingering roots behind this, the sustained push for tithing in the church today, is the clergy salary. Not a few pastors feel that they must preach tithing to remind their congregation of its obligation to support them. Their operational costs and their programs regulatory, the promise of financial blessing or the fear of a financial curse has been employed too often as a insensitive to incentive to ensure that the tithe keeps rolling in.
Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
It is in this way, tithing today is sometimes presented as the equivalent of a Christian stock investment, paying the tithe, and God will give you more money in return.
Stop. Wait, hold. That's so true, John. Watch this. The pastors tell everyone that comes in there that this building is yours too. What a lie, Tony. Let's get out of debt. Let's pay this big tithe every week so we can get out of debt. That church don't belong to the pastor. It belongs to the government. Government can throw that brother out anytime he wants. Anytime he wants.
Absolutely.
Right, Josh?
Refuse to tithe and God will punish you. Such thoughts rip at the heart of the good news of the gospel.
What happened up there? Let's keep going. What's that up there? What is that? All right. Okay, that's enough, Josh. Come on. You read too much and then people who listen.
The same can be said about the clergy salary. It too has no good New Testament merit. In fact, the clergy salary.
What is that? Wow, what lies, Josh, huh? How they spread their venom, huh? Through the centuries, Tony, with this tithing.
In fact, the clergy salary runs against the grain of the entire new covenant. Elders, shepherds in the first century were not salaried. Wait. Yeah, were not salaried. They were men with an earthly vocation.
Come on.
They were men with an earthly vocation.
Right.
They were men with an earthly vocation.
Is there a loose wire, Josh? Is that why it's going out?
They gave to the flock rather than taking from it.
That's right.
They gave.
That's right.
So the apostles gave to the people they ministered to. Not they took from them.
praises.
It was a group of elders that Paul uttered these sober words. I have not coveted anyone's silver or gold or clothing. You yourselves, you know that your these hands of mine have supplied my own needs.
Wow, I like that. That's great. See that?
You yourselves know that these hands of mine have supplied my own
Look
needs.
at that. And these hot shots with their suits, they walk up there and they're stealing from people. And they're putting pressure on all poor people, Tom. They really are, man.
Needs of my congregation. You can read that in Acts 20:33 through 35. Giving a salary to pastors elevates them above the rest of God's people. It creates a critical sense that turns the living body of Christ into a business. Since the pastor and his staff are compensated for ministry, they are the paid professionals. The rest of the church lapse into the state of passive dependence.
It keeps blinking out in and out, Josh. Walk up. It's just, you have a loose wire somewhere?
Maybe just weather.
The weather, probably, yeah. I'll tell you, that's a good book, Josh. That's awesome, man.
If all Christians got into touch with the call that lies upon them
Wow.
in functioning priests in the Lord's house, and they were permitted to exercise the call, the question would immediately arise: what on earth are we paying the pastor for?
That's right.
So by keeping you passive and dependent on them, they prosper off of you.
Yeah, sure do. They got you sleeping. They got you shaking your head, yes.
Just a little more, brothers and sisters. Hold on. It won't
Take
be.
your time, Josh. We just got to get out of that light. The light was giving you a headache, Josh.
But in the pressure of the passive priesthood, such questions are asked. On the contrary, when the church functions as she should, a professional clergy becomes unnecessary. So if they taught you to function as the Bible taught you, the clergy would be unneeded. So that's why they teach you to depend on the pastor, so he can live off of you.
Absolutely, Josh. Absolutely, brother. And that's what's going on in there.
Suddenly, the thought that the job of a pastor looks heretical. It is. It's not a job.
That's right. Come on.
Paul and all the apostles had earthly vocations. They did not depend on the congregation to live.
That's right. They never took money from them. Never. They laid it down at the apostles' feet, and they took it and went and got everything that they
Put simply, a professional clergy fosters the pacifying illusion of that the Word of God is classified and dangerous material, but only card-carrying experts can handle. So a paid clergy fosters the idea there's a hierarchy system in God's. Basically, if you're not a pastor, a deacon, or an elder, and you're not on the staff,
they put you down,
but
they make you feel belittled.
You're not equal in God's eyes to them. And a lot of pastors do act like that.
They sure do.
They act like they're above everybody.
Yeah. I know right away when I meet him, when he mentioned, I'm a pastor. Of what? Of life?
But it is not at all. Paying a pastor encourages him to be a man pleaser. It makes him a slave of men.
Uh-huh.
His meal ticket is attached to how much his congregation likes him.
Wow.
Thus, it is not able to speak freely without the fear of that he may lose some heavy tithers. Many a pastor have confused this very thing. A further peril to the paid pastorate is that it produces clergy who feel stuck in the pastorate because they believe that they lack employable skills. So in other words, a lot of pastors, some people that are paid like that, they can only do that one thing. So some of them, sometimes a person will go to seminary or school just because they want to be paid a paid preacher.
Wow.
Because they want the benefits of that lifestyle. In other words, they don't want to work for their own money.
Right.
They want other people to pay them
Wow.
to talk to them, to be an inspirational
That's what's
speaker.
going on, right, Josh? Isn't that true, Tony? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just bear with us. Our stream keeps cutting on and off.
Why come, Josh?
I don't know.
You got a loose wire?
But if you look at it, that's true. Because if you wanted an easy paid job, just go to seminary, learn how to talk some religious stuff to people,
Uh-huh.
and they'll give you a church to go to and a salary already,
Wow.
and you'll get paid. So literally, all you have to do is one day a week or twice a week, stand in front of people and read out of a book, and they'll pay you.
Which they don't even understand.
Who wouldn't do that? Honestly,
Wow.
if you think about it, how easy is that to make a lifestyle off of?
Wow.
Then the more people come to your church, the more money you get.
Wow.
And you start getting bigger and bigger churches. Not always, but hopefully. I, Frank, personally know a good number of pastors who felt convicted to leave the ministry. All their schooling and training had been dedicated to studying and preaching the Bible. While those skills are noteworthy, they are of limited appeal. In a secular job market, the major handle that now is fighting a new career to support their families. A friend of mine and an ex-pastor himself is writing a booklet of how pastors can find employment and enter new careers after leaving the clergy system. His ideas are based on a theory he had others like him have flashed them out, whatever. So basically, the pastoral position drains you to the point of you not being able to have a real job, right?
That's just the
It puts the pressure on you to only be a pastor.
Wow.
So then your actual working skills start to diminish.
There you go.
And you're not able to have a lot of times not able to have a full 40-hour work job,
Right.
which you should have to begin with.
Then you're only dependent on what comes in from people that come into your church.
Just a little more. I'm almost
Josh,
done.
where'd you hear this? I heard this before too. That a lot of people.
Even so, it is exceedingly difficult for many contemporary pastors to acknowledge the lack of scriptural support for their office, simply because they are financially dependent on it. They are financially dependent upon it. So they can't support it with the Bible, but they do it because it finances them.
Huh.
Wow.
What a lie, huh?
Sinclair once said, "It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on him not understanding it."
Huh. Wow.
That's true.
It is.
In other words, if your salary is depending on, if your lifestyle depends on something, understanding that it's wrong hurts your bank account.
Wow.
And the reason a lot of pastors will not come to the truth, not all, some are, but eventually they'll have to give up their denominational backing, the money, and they'll have to give up the tithing.
Wow. And there goes their kids, children going to good schools. There goes their home.
A number of my friends, ex-pastor friends, have admitted that they were part of a religious system that subtly but profoundly injured them and their families. That profoundly injured them and their families. So professional pastorates hurt the pastor and the family.
Yep. Right on down too. Right on
Unfortunately, Unfortunately, most of them are deeply naive about the overwhelming power of the religious system, and it is a fallacy of a faceless system that does not tire the clergy up and spitting them out its own. One more, okay, I'm done. Just this 2 more paragraphs, brothers and sisters. Bear with me. Ushers and the collection plate. We've seen that in church when we usually
You
go.
want me to read something, Josh?
Yeah, just read these last 2 paragraphs. Ushers and
Yeah,
the
just the lighter one. Okay, sorry. Yeah, these are not really scriptural lessons.
scriptural.
I mean,
They're not scriptural. That
where are we going, Josh? Right.
just these 2 paragraphs, and
Okay.
we're done.
Despite these problems, collecting tithes and offerings is now a part of the almost every church service. How did the practice of ushers passing collection plates take place? This is another post-apostolic invention. It began in 1662. Although alms, dishes, and alms chests were present before that. The usher originated from Queen Elizabeth I, 1533, 1603, recognition of the liturgy of the Church of England. Ushers were responsible for walking people to their seats, in part to ensure that reserved spots weren't taken by the wrong people.
So
Wow.
originally, ushers were set up to make sure poor people didn't sit in the rich people's places in church. So again, that's a class system. So unless you're tithing or unless you're part of the pastoral staff, you can't sit wherever you want to.
Okay.
And that's how a lot of churches are. You have the pastor in the pulpit.
You are right.
Then you have the elders and the deacons in the front and everyone behind.
And I've noticed that if you go to a wrong seat, a person gets a little annoyed. It's true. Okay. This is another. Okay. Okay. Right here. Ushers were responsible for walking people to their seats, in part to ensure the reserved spots weren't taken by the wrong people. Collecting the offering, the keeping records of who took communion, the lesser director of the usher was the church porter. A minor order, lesser clergy, that can be traced back to the 3rd century. Porters had the duty of locking and opening the church doors, keeping order in the building, and providing general direction to the deacons. Porters were replaced by church wanderers. In England, before and during the Reformation period, after the church warden came the usher.
Wow. That was good.
Conclusion is the next step.
No, we don't have to read the conclusion. So, next Bible study, we'll be going into chapter 9 about baptism and what we'll learn
Josh,
about biblical.
Tell our viewers to go back, viewers. Listen, about a month. If you're missing this, go back about a month and a half. We brought this whole book. All right, so
Broke it down.
Yeah, and we broke it down really good for you, so you would understand. Okay, we'll be right there. Hold on, Tony. Yeah, I'm going to say something. Hold on. Yeah, I will. Hold on. See, there's a scripture that always backs what we preach and what we bring in books, because we never do that. We never rely on a book, although we have a great library now of books. But I want you to read tonight, viewers. Go in your Bible and read 2 Peter 3:14. 2 Peter 3:14 tells it all. How Peter explained how deep Paul was, that readers and pastors today who read his words don't understand what he's saying even today, and they twist his words to their own destruction. They stay unstable. They're unstable, these pastors, because they've gotten into so many lies. Now it's catching up to them. And what Joshua just said before, right,
So,
Josh? They're leaving the church like crazy.
Listen to this. I'll close. I'll read this and then make a couple comments, then I'll close.
It's not, wait, we'll say something, Josh. It's not good that they're leaving the church, Tony, but it's a punishment for the Most High for lying.
Yeah.
Why should you sit under a ministry that's lying to you, Tony?
Yeah.
I wouldn't sit there.
No.
I wouldn't sit there. Not a point about giving you money. It is, no, but that's not the point. The real point is, why should I be lied to? And I believe a lot of Afro-Americans are coming out.
This is the book of Matthew. In fact,
Tell them where.
I'll share the screen and unshare it and read it that way. And this is the last thing. I'll close with this precept to show you what Christ said about this. Supposed to be following the example of the Messiah in everything
That's right.
we do. We are to do our best within our power to emulate the Messiah, not Paul. Let's make
It's
that
amazing,
clear.
Tony, how they don't know Paul, but they lift him up as a God.
These 12 Yashayah sent forth, and commanding them, go not into the way of the Gentiles, or into any city of the Samaritans enter you not,
Come on.
but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
And when you go,
And when you go, say,
no,
preach.
get a sermon ready.
And when you go,
No, write down a sermon.
when you go,
4-point sermon.
when you
Fairy tale
come
story.
on,
Fairy tale story.
when you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of the Most High is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the leper, raise the dead, cast out demons, not put demons into people. Freely you have received.
Come on.
Freely you have received.
Freely give.
Freely, wait, let me highlight it.
Do that again. You have received freely. You don't have to pay somebody to learn.
Freely you have received, freely give.
Wow.
Let me keep reading. Provide neither gold nor silver nor brass or in your purses. In other words, don't live off of people or go around trying to use what I tell you to make a lifestyle out of it.
Is that what he means, Jeff?
Nor scrip for your journey.
You're right. You're right.
Neither 2 coats, neither shoes, nor a staff. And into whatsoever city or town that you shall enter, inquire who it is worthy, and there abide until you go thence. And when you come into an house, salute it. And
That means welcome them.
And if the house is worthy, let your peace be upon it.
That's right.
But if it is unworthy, let your peace return unto you.
That's right. And when you go out, that's all.
So we clearly have seen what Christ said, how to operate in the ministry. We are not to provide any financial backing for what we do.
Amen, bro. I don't know. I want to be gentle when I say this, gentle. Whether or not, whether we call, GOCC is asking money for, that, what is it? That schooling? Academy? I don't think it's wrong, but on the other hand, I don't think it's really biblical. Pretty good.
So,
yeah. But they're supposed to be welcome to them.
so what we
Because we have to work.
Well, they go all over the place with me.
That's true. They are being paid for that too, though. But that's not true. That part's all right.
So we like to say this. So we've seen and learned today the end result of tithing. You are not supposed to tithe your money to anybody. So
try it, but you're not going to try it to anyone. And tell them.
So
Tell them, brother.
So hopefully that second part of that lesson cleared up some more gaps in your understanding and
Yes.
helped you understand more.
Yes.
Shalom.
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 Shalom.